Thank you for joining us for our very first virtual reception with HCCA's resident artists. I'm Mary Kay Baxter, the Deputy Director at the Howard County Arts Council. I'll be interviewing artists while Ellie Hernandez, Gallery and Programs Coordinator, manages the presentation and monitors the chat. So with that, let's begin with our first artist. Where's Andre? Is he here?
I'm here.
Awesome. Hi, Andre. Why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your medium?
I'm Andre Track. The works I have in the exhibit are mixed media, drawings / paintings. A large part of my career I've done, I'd say, predominantly representational work. These, I suppose you could say, are more abstracted. They don't necessarily represent anything specific necessarily, or that's not what I'm trying to do with them. It's a lot of different mediums. They're not super planned out. I kind of just go at it and see where I end up.
Yeah. So hands are a recurring motif in your work, and I know that we're seeing them in these exhibits, these images also. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I started this drawing series several years ago, and it wasn't like I decided to just use that. It just sort of developed on its own.
Do hands symbolize anything to you? Do they mean anything to you? Are they significant to you in any way, or just inspired in the moment?
Well, as with all my work, I never think of a single specific meaning to anything. It's kind of broad and general. It's a composition. It's a way to create composition and to do the drawing.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your residency in your studio at HCCA. How has it aided in your art practice?
Well, it's obviously great to work among a lot of other great professional artists. It's a very good space to work in a great environment.
How long have you been here? I don't know.
I think 2007.
Wow.
About, I can remember, I think. It's been a while.
Yeah. Has your medium evolved since you've been here? Or has your artwork evolved?
I was just mainly doing oil paintings when I got here, for the most part. And then these that you see in the show was sort of a side project, sort of.
Oh, a side project, yeah, yeah. Great. So we can open it up now to questions. If anyone has any questions that they want to unmute themselves and ask, they could do that, or we could, you can write it in the chat and Ellie can read it out loud for us. Anybody? Brave questions? Oh, all right. So I don't know if we have any questions right now, but we might come back to you later, Andre, to, you know, if someone is inspired by something else, that might remind them to ask you a question later. Okay, thanks so much for sharing with us. Okay, our next artist is Joyce. Where's Joyce? I know she's here.
Here I am.
Oh, hi. Hey. Great. Okay, hi Joyce. So Joyce, introduce yourself and your medium, and then I'll ask you some questions.
I'm Joyce Ritter, Joyce J. Ritter, please. And I am a quilter whose life intent is to have quilting seen as an art form. I belong to Faithful Circle Quilt Guild, have for many, many years. And the big delight of my heart is when people look at my artwork and mistake it for a painting. Gives me good feelings. I'm working off of photographs I've taken. Some of them go all the way back to the 1990s. And I'm working off of black and white contact sheets because you can't get a black and white negative medium format enlarged anywhere easily. So I'm working off of my black and white negatives and using my imagination for the color.
That's wonderful. So I definitely, I would say that everyone's going to mistake these for paintings. I know you put a lot of detail in your work. How did you get into fabric quilts as a medium?
I took a course at Parks and Planning when I was first married, and that was the beginning of it. I've always sewn. I've been sewing since I was 7. My aunts taught me. My father's father was a Lithuanian tailor, owned a tailoring business, big, blah, blah, blah. So it's in my blood. Genetically, I'm disposed to fabric. That's all I can say.
Yes. Well, great. So I know that all of your pieces have a haiku that are connected with them. So before I ask you to tell me the haikus, because I want to know every single haiku for all 3 of these pieces, but can you tell
You're expecting me to remember?
Well, whichever ones you remember, I want to know. So how did that begin? What inspired you to start with a haiku? What is the story?
In quilt, I'm an old English teacher, and that was part of the writing courses that we would teach. But in Quilt Guild, we say that the quilt talks to you as to what it needs, what color it needs, what quilting it needs, blah, 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 blah. And I always wanted to be a teacher, but I think really what I wanted to be was a preacher, because everything I do is kind of autobiographical and has a moral to it. Mm-hmm. It tells a story. So I'm an inherent storyteller. At least nowadays I tell the truth. But back then, so the haiku happened during the quilting process. Mm-hmm. The piecing is very complex and very confusing and very scattered. The fabric bomb goes off and you can't find anything. Yeah. But this quilting is me and the machine, period, full stop, and threads, a lot of threads. Yeah. And it's just a, I feel sorry for my roommates. But, and the words come, and this, what I think the quilt says and what it tells me it says are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. This one is waiting. It's from a photograph I took at Savage Mill before it was renovated a long time ago. That's maybe 1980s. And wondering what's next, impatiently patient, glad, waiting is finite.
See, I knew you would remember them.
Only because I looked at the back of it 3 weeks ago.
Well, good. That's so great, Joyce. Well, I don't want to hog all your time if we have other people who have questions. Does anybody have a question that's here to ask Joyce?
We have a few people who are raising their hand. So I think I saw Joan's hand first. I'm going to ask Joan if she'd like to unmute herself and ask her question. Joan?
Yeah, well, I had 2 questions. One for Andre, but I couldn't find the hand waiver.
Oh, well, great.
So I want to ask Andre how much Linda Uphoff influenced him with his abstracts, and he'll remember who I'm talking about. Are you still there, Andre?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. Yes, I was influenced by her work. I was also doing a little bit of more abstract oriented work, if you want to use the term. It's kind of a generalized term. Around that period when she was at the Wella Mill, and if you remember, some of my first drawings were a little more basic looking, and they developed quite a bit over the years.
Right. Yeah.
Certainly, I think I learned a lot from her and the different mediums that she worked in, and it probably gave me some ideas to try a bunch of different mediums and different methods and different techniques. Sure, I think Yeah, she was. You could say she was an influence on me as an artist for sure. Yeah.
Am I still on?
Yeah.
My question for Joyce is, you studied photography. When I met you at Savage Mill, you were a photographer. Can you talk a little bit about that part of your career?
I was a darkroom photographer. Black and white was my specialty, medium format especially, and infrared, 35 millimeter infrared. I did color work as slides, but my specialty was black and white. It left more to the imagination than the color did, and it was easier for me to print. I left photography. I was able to support my photography by being a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer, a pet photographer. I'm really good with cats. But when photography went digital, now I work with my hands, not my head. So I gave that up, and at that point I was also taking care of my father, who was ill. And I went back to the 1977 class I took in patchwork and got back into the quilting. Thank you for asking.
That's great. Thanks, Joan, for those great questions. Do we have, Sarah, do you have a question too? Ellie has to, I have no control over the mutes.
Sarah, you can ask your question.
Awesome. Okay. First of all, Joyce, I did not know that you were a photographer, and I would love to talk to you sometime about your experience in the darkroom, because I thoroughly enjoyed it when I was studying photography in college, and I would love to set up a darkroom someday in my future house. So that would be amazing.
Let's do it.
And so my question for you is that I am fairly new to sewing as a whole. I've only really done garments, so I haven't gotten a chance to venture into quilting. And I'm curious, do you create a pattern ahead of time that you follow in a way to cut things out, or do you kind of go, I know there are some sewists who like to just pin fabric up on a mannequin and start sewing. Does your process work that way as well?
With a classic quilt, yeah, you do patterns. And when I was doing art quilts, I would draw my patterns, and we worked with freezer paper and blah, blah, blah. And nowadays, this is what I work from. Itsy pieces.
Okay.
So I, unlike Andre, I am very, very controlled, and because I have no control otherwise. So I work off a pattern that is numbered and lettered, and obsessive compulsive helps a lot.
With my glass, I can relate to that. I use the tiny pieces, and I number everything and all that.
Yep. Yep.
Now, another thing that I noticed that you have this beautiful movement in the top stitching. Do you do that freehand? Do you do it by hand, or like what's your kind of process for that?
Free motion quilting, machine quilting, free motion machine quilting. That's very free flowing, but it's my brush stroke. So I do a lot of quilting because that's how I put my texture into the work that Andre does with the metallics and stuff, and that the painters do with their brushes. I do with my stitching. I can actually create shadow. I create shadows with those stitches, so adds a little more detail to my. You can see it in the bricks. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Great questions. Thanks, Joyce, very much. All right, I think it's time for us to move on to Myung. Is she in here?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, hi. Hi, Myung. Okay, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Myung Kim. I resident here since 2011, and I really like, my studio is very quiet. I'm so glad to join this, this group. Today I'm gonna introduce my work up there.
Great.
I'm not. Sometimes I use collage. Not this time. I should use photographs. I use my handmade paper. I made myself. And before I make doing my work, I write poem first. So I made each picture has a poem actually, but I realized I don't need to put it in my poem, but I can read one of them right now.
That would be great.
And so you can see there's a top of there, there's a small house there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm reading. Okay, let me read. Glass house. Very small fairy tale glass house. A new social isolation greenhouse restaurant in France. When will Cinderella open the door? You know what? This COVID-19, I just cannot pass this time. I know everybody struggle this time, so I cannot just pass this COVID-19. So I try to do, express my emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of my questions, you're answering all of my questions actually in just describing your pieces, because we noticed masks in your work this time. We noticed that your medium has changed a little bit. So I was going to ask you, how has COVID-19 affected your work? How has it influenced your paintings right here? I mean, we can really see it in here. So tell me a little bit about that. How did it come into these paintings?
This picture, first of all, I collect picture what I like, and then I write, my poem, each one,
Mm-hmm.
and then I try to, put together and into my work this time. So anyway, there is a many story,
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a many story. Title is Still Waiting for Spring. We looking for spring. Everybody looking for spring. This is not spring at all. So this is left side photograph means mannequin.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a restaurant in Washington D.C. They made a mannequin instead of empty seat. So
Yeah.
they intriguing me. And the other end of this photograph, wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's a horrible time. They just wedding bride and groom only. It's terrible. So I think I try to write each photograph, and then I try to translate from Korean to English. Anyway, so
Yeah.
anyway, any question?
Any questions for Myung? We'll wait, because I know the participant section to put a hand up is kind of a weird spot. Oh, all popped up.
So my work is influenced a lot of Far Eastern art. So I do, one of the centerpiece is carving first, and then, and then I put my paper into, press my carving, and then
Yes.
I painting, sumi painting end up here. It's a very complicated
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
We have some questions for you.
So, Samyung, this is Colleen, and I just wanted to say how impressed I was with this body of work. I absolutely love your floral, abstract, very lyrical paintings that you typically do. And this is so modern and so just timely. I just wanted to let you know how impressed I was with this body of work.
Thank you. But anyway, I told you, I cannot just pass this time,
Right?
Yeah. It is, we should be something do, so I do it my way. Thank you.
We have another question
I think we have another question. Sarah?
Yeah. So I noticed that a lot of this work that you've shown is specifically about what's going on right now. Does your work tend to focus on current events as a whole around the world, or more specifically just how it's affected you, or how you connect to what might currently be going on?
It doesn't matter, we are, I'm myself is Korean American. It means, international. So,
Right.
It doesn't matter, East and West. Yeah. The important thing is we should share our, emotion, at this time. Yeah, that is important. Yeah.
I love that.
Mary, can you see another piece of my piece?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, Ellie, can we go
Yeah.
through the last one?
Yeah. Another one.
Oh, the other one?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, this piece is actually, I intended to make a right in there. This means it's a person sit there and looking for a mountain. This means mountain, means hope, So, so I try to, imply my intention, we're looking for hope, that's the writing in there.
Yeah.
And what got you into paper making?
Paper making, oh, that's my, another small hobby, so I put it in, what I have and then mixer with them and, I do my way. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for great questions. Thank you, Myung.
Thank you.
We're really loving your pieces. We're gonna move on to our next artist. So who's next? Jeremy? Are you ready? Let's see.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi. Okay, so introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your medium, and then I'm gonna ask you some specific questions.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Scott. I have been at the Arts Center for the last 11 years. I do a little bit of everything. A lot of the stuff I do is oil paint. That's probably what most people would say they know my work. But I'm really not loyal to any medium, so.
Great, thanks. Okay, well, we love having you. Let me ask some questions. So I want to jump ahead. I have a question about your painting fragments.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Can you jump to fragments, Ellie?
Yeah. So I guess this is me trying to, explore a little bit. A lot of the work that I've done before, so I've done things that kind of break up, and they do have these sort of fragments like this, or it looks like a big montage or this conglomerate, sort of all these images mashed together to sort of make this narrative. And I think now I'm just really exploring, when to call my artwork finished and like when to stop. I've always really overworked things, or in my opinion, like I can keep going all the time, but then I'll see a lot of people's work and they happen to stop at these points and they seem very deliberate, and I don't know, they have these really painterly qualities to their work. So I guess for me, it's like I'm figuring out where is finished, where is done, and how I can kind of, abstract things and put things together without really trying too hard,
So Ellie, go back to the first screen that has all of his paintings together. So just want to show the difference between this painting and then really how visually, you could tell what everything else is, right? I'm not asking like these big questions about that one because I can understand this is a pool, this is a car, right? So can you tell us, so they're depicting a variety of subjects, And do they relate to each other in some way? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about how this collection relates for you?
I mean, personally, everything that I do, kind of like Joyce, is from imagery that is either, you know, my life in one way or another, or things I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the time, it's not something that I will necessarily start and then immediately finish. So I'll start something and then I may come back to it like 4 months later while I already have something else in progress. So it's a little bit of me kind of, you know, what's the word, extending these ideas and kind of just seeing what I get. And so with everything, I think there's like with this one, to me, it was very simple and the shapes were really simple, but I guess the perspective, and it was like very calming, you know, and I wanted to figure out a way of like, of course I could go ahead and paint this and put every sort of reflection in the pool and every ripple and paint the line on the string holding the flags and all this type of stuff. So it was like, how can I sort of show that and try and convey that without doing too much? So that's kind of what this one is. And this is the Roger Carter Center. So I usually go exercise there. So.
Oh, great, great. Inspired by life. I love it. So I don't want to take a lot of time. I feel like I'm asking questions and then everyone's asking really big, great questions. So if I have another question for Jeremy, but if anybody wants to pop in, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll quiet down. Anybody want to pop in here? All right, I'll ask my question. In case we get any other questions, I'll ask quickly. So you work in a lot of mediums, I know. We've talked about this a lot. So how does that affect your artistic practice to be going back and forth between different mediums?
Personally, I think it helps a lot because it you know, you learn something in one medium, and then even though it may not directly, I guess, translate, somehow it still, you know, influences whatever you do. But it also breaks up sort of the monotony. I find myself really struggling sometimes to find, you know, inspiration, you know, and I think before all of this started, or at least this season, I was really going back and forth on what to do. You know, I used to do a lot of screen prints, and now I guess I've gotten more into, you know, like building things, actual things with my hands, whether, and so now it's like I've started to look at things that are more functional, and then in doing something like that, you can kind of burn out, and then coming back to painting is always a nice way to, I guess, you know, get re-energized and everything. And so with everything going on now, I think that like before I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Been there, done that. And now I think I have way more of an incentive to really paint or create things to record the times, you know?
Yeah.
So I think now, like without having to really look too much into what you're looking at in this show, I think now and going further, I think I'll do a lot more things with more of a purpose, or at least I don't feel like I have to look so hard to find inspiration, you know?
Yeah. We have a question from Colleen. So when I let Colleen in.
So Jeremy,
Hi.
in the most of the work that I'm familiar with, and this does not apply to the portrait or to the shark painting, but I have always noticed this kind of loneliness or isolation, or almost some sort of surreal kind of aspect to the work. Is there something there, or is that just me interpreting that?
In all the other work, you mean?
In some of the work here,
Yeah.
like this, as well as the pool, and as well as the street scene, not the portrait or the shark painting, but those three paintings. And then the body of work that I've seen previously of yours, it also had that element, or I've seen that element, and I'm just wondering if there's something there.
Yeah, I think that you know, by kind of isolating the viewer, or at least, you know, making them feel like they're sort of alone when looking at the work, it gives them more of a chance to really fall into it, you know, more so than I want them, I guess, to feel like either they're a participant or like the work is actually directly focused towards them. So if, and for me, I think it's just more interesting. I don't know why. I guess with being alone, I guess there's a lot of possibilities. You know, you could see a UFO, and if you're alone, nobody believes you. All of a sudden, you're the crazy person, right? Or you could, like, you know, have something miraculous to you, and everybody thinks you're lying. So I think when you're alone, you get that opportunity to kind of see the magic, you know, and whether or not someone else gets it or not, you know, you kind of leave that possibility open. So yeah, I definitely like to try and isolate the viewer. And maybe I'm lonely, Colleen. Who the hell knows, you know?
Thanks, Colleen, for a good question. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, our next artist is going to be Mary Jo.
We did have a question from Joyce real quick. I know we are running out of time, but Joyce asked, Jeremy, you've had a lot of life changes in the past year, and then came COVID. How has this impacted your art?
I have had a lot of time to do a lot of different things, you know, and by that I mean like more building stuff. I just recently moved, so you know, I've been building a lot more furniture in terms of like setting up my home space so that I can work here as well. And then, you know, yeah, I mean, I think COVID is just giving me a lot of time to, I guess, work on whatever it is that I really want to work on, and just try some new things. So I have a lot of stuff that I've tried for, you know, myself and for work and for other things. So it's been an opportunity. I think the time is like, it's been a very good time to figure out like, oh wow, you know, let me try and use this time that I have, because I'll never find another time like this. I doubt anybody will be at home this much in, you know, the next.
Well, certainly not after this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. Not when we have the choice, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Jeremy.
Yep.
So we are running low on time because we have given ourselves only until 7 p.m., but we're going to keep on going. We're going to record through all the artists. So if you have to leave, that's fine. If you have a question for an artist that's coming up later, you can go ahead and type it in the chat or send it directly to Ellie if you want to edit it down, because we will ask the question, and then when we have the recording, you can watch it later if you need to leave. But we're going to just keep on going with all the artists. Just know that we're definitely going to go over time because we want to talk to everybody. So Mary Jo, right?
Yes. Oh, I have to, wait a minute. Yeah, am I unmuted?
No, yes, I hear you, but I can't see you. So hang on one second. Okay, I see you. Great. Hi, Mary Jo. Okay, introduce yourself, please, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Okay, I'm Mary Jo Tidlaka, and I have a studio at the Howard County Center for the Arts.
You've had a studio here for a long time, right?
When people ask that question, I say forever.
Yeah.
1984.
Wow.
Yeah.
So great. So let me ask you some questions about these exhibits, and then these paintings in this exhibit, and then maybe we'll talk more about how long you've been here, unless people jump in with questions. Okay, Ellie, can we see some of her paintings or her big collection? All right. So Mary Jo, can you please tell us about the places that are featured in your paintings? Maybe we could go through.
The first one on the left, well, okay, here, Giverny, Monet's garden, his Japanese bridge, a woman on it. And I visited there a couple of years in September of 2018. And I just was swallowed by the place. I just totally loved it. And this is, it's interesting. I was on that bridge walking across, and a Japanese woman was standing on the Japanese bridge, and I had my camera and I took her picture, and there we are. And I just was so taken that Monet made this and we get to see it and experience it.
Yeah.
And there's one other image of his garden, and you can see the bridge in the right background there. And it just, when I was there, I felt totally alone and swallowed by nature. And during COVID, I've been going on a walk every night, and I look at trees and grass, and it's my savior. And nature is I love nature. And I painted, okay, there are two others that are French related from my trip a couple years ago. And I stayed with a family. I was on an art exchange. This is a little village. This is a French village. It's a little, it's you know, people don't live like that now. This is a little museum town, kind of like, and full of history. On the road that Julius Caesar took to go north, Rue Julius Caesar, on the road he took to go north to England. These buildings are museums. Under the floors, you're walking in the museum, and under the floors are Roman baths. And I just go crazy with history. And
So let's go to the last one, because is that one?
Okay. Okay, this is the French family. That one's the French family. Okay, that's the French family. Yes, I lived with these people. Okay, this one is right here in Ellicott City. The Patapsco Female Institute, the Chesapeake Shakespeare Group put on Moving Macbeth last summer, and this is the moment when Lady Macbeth really sticks it to Macbeth to be sure to kill his visitor that night so he becomes king. And I just thought, oh God, we got no roof on this building, blood's flowing down the steps, and she's at it, and he falls for it. And well, he wants it too, but she really, she sticks it to him.
Yep.
And I just find it so poignant that the plays are not on this year. And here we are.
Yeah.
And if I can say one thing, what have I done during COVID? I have had to learn how to use Zoom, and it has taken all my energy. I had to buy a new computer, a new printer, and new everything. And I've struggled with it, but it has been my connection to the world. And I'm grateful.
Yeah, I'm grateful too, because I'm so glad that you could participate in this chat.
Yeah.
Do we have questions for Mary Jo? I'm gonna pause a minute because I know questions sometimes come after.
Yes. Jeremy submitted a question. He said, Mary Jo, you use orange/red under your paintings a lot in your work. Where does this influence come from?
I was at the Maryland Institute taking a painting class, and this young student, a fellow student, this was a long time ago, a young fellow student did it, and I thought, that's cool. So I do it, and I do it. Yeah, I just like it. I love red. I just find it so, I just like to see it because I think it wakes me up or something.
That's great. Oh, we have a couple comments, I think, coming in for Jeremy, but you're gonna capture these at the end, Ellie. If questions come for other people, we'll just keep it. So if anyone has questions for people who've already gone, go ahead and submit them to the chat or send them directly to Ellie also. Okay, so thank you so much, Mary Jo. I don't see any more questions for you right now, but we might come back at the end when people come in. All right, so let's go on to Sarah. Where is Sarah coming in?
Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Okay, introduce yourself, please.
Okay, my name is Sarah Engel. I am probably one of the newer artists here at HCCA, and I, at least for my studio space, I primarily work in stained glass. As an artist myself, I am kind of a jack of all trades, similar, I think, to Jeremy, where I can't just pick just one. Usually when I'm doing things, I'll even be knitting to keep my hands busy. I mean, I'm working on something right now. And yeah, I actually get a lot of inspiration from traditional media because I've been studying art since early grade school. Is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And so learning how to paint and learning composition and all of that stuff and all of those traditional mediums of drawing and painting and sculpture and all of that helped me kind of transition a lot easier into stained glass.
Well, that was one of my questions, but that makes perfect sense. I know you're very artsy. I see you around in the halls, and you've got something going on, and you've got painting classes that you're doing too. So I know there's lots going on. So tell me a little bit about starting your residency here. I know you are the newest person that's in the show today. So tell us a little bit about your residency. I know you began in December, so it's been about 6 months, 3 months normal, 3 months in COVID, right?
Yeah, so even though my residency technically started in December, I wasn't really able to start working until late January because I had to build the ventilation hood for my soldering setup. And so for me, it was nice to be able to have a workshop area to be able to assemble it because I was using an old filing cabinet as sort of the base for this massive ventilation hood, like the kind that you would have over a stove, but bigger. And for that to finally get done and to be able to wire up the table so I have a working outlet on it and all of that, it was nice to be able to create something with my hands that I could then use later. And so that unfortunately took up the first chunk of time that I've had as a resident, but after that I have just been over the moon about the amount of space that I have, how friendly the residents are, how easy it is to talk to people in the administration like you, and how I'm not terrified of doing something wrong, or even though it's in a school, I don't feel like I'm in school.
Yeah.
And it's nice to finally just feel like I can relax in a space of my own creatively that I haven't had since I was in college, and it's been several years. And so having that environment where there are other artists who, while they may not do the same medium as me, they share that same kind of creative drive, and that I can look to for critique if I want it, and I will get more than just the, oh, it's so pretty, oh, it's right. You know, it's like I can get something constructive out of it.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a community of fellow artists who I could go to. Right now it's not great to, you know, visit a whole lot of people because of the pandemic going on, but it's really allowed me to be able to make the things that I've been dreaming of making for years, like the piece that's in the show.
Yeah, so tell us, okay, so I know that you do a ton of commissioned work, and I want to ask you about that too. But I know that this piece is part of a larger collection that you're building, and this is the piece that you were able to complete for this year. But tell me about that, because I know that there's a story there with the larger collection.
So it kind of stems back to my personal spirituality. So I'm pagan, and I tend to work with a fairly earth-based or at least nature-based set of spiritual kind of guidelines. And even then, it's not really all of that straightforward. But one of the things in paganism and a lot of nature-based spirituality is working with the 4 elements. And each of the 4 elements has a correspondence with it that tends to point towards different aspects of us as humans. Earth is usually grounded foundations, the home, physical health, whereas water is usually love and emotions and sort of the your inner feelings, essentially. And then there's air, which is more about communication and thoughts and decisions, whereas fire is more about passion and action and anger and a lot of the things and creativity, actually. Mm-hmm. And so I created a 4 elements series, and this is the first of the 4. This one is titled Earth. Each of the pieces in the series are framed in a triangular symbol that is actually the alchemical symbol for that element. So in this case, it is the downward facing triangle with the line going through the tip. The other 3 elements are either another downward facing triangle or 2 upward facing triangles, one of which also has a line through the tip. And so that will be the sort of boundary of the piece that all of the animals that I am designing inside of this symbol will be breaking out of that space. One thing that I love about stained glass is that it usually has a beautiful, strong, solid frame on the outside, but a lot of that time that feels very confining. And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to create a frame and then I like to break the frame. And so that's why for this piece, when I put the edging on just the triangular pieces, it's not only structurally sound that way, but it's also showing you what the base shape is, and then all of the pieces of the horns that are moving past those are not framed. And so because I don't have a lot of pieces that are outside of the main frame area, it doesn't mess with the structural integrity, while it still allows me to be able to visually show what I'm kind of feeling, that I want it to be more than just a symbol. It's more than just earth as, one of the 4 elements, whether you're talking about spirituality or if you're just talking about kind of the basis for all natural life. And that there's more to it than that. There's more to it than a skull is, it is the sort of symbol of what happens at the end of our life cycle. We return back to the earth, and it eventually nurtures and creates a new life form. That, that whole circle of life thing, there's more to it than just fun songs and a good movie. It's a very cyclical thing that us as humans have to experience. And so with this piece, I have had this, actually the whole series I've had in my mind and designed for about 3 years. And I bought the glass for it almost as soon as I was able to finish the design for the series, but I never got a chance to actually make it. And a lot of that was because I didn't have the space. When I first moved to Maryland, I lived in an apartment and there was no space for me to work. And then when we moved to our townhouse here in Columbia, I had the space to have work that I could make, but it all had to be small. And then when I realized I was making a commission for my mother-in-law that was 29 inches wide.
Yeah,
And I didn't have enough room. I barely had enough room to be able to have the whole thing sit out as I was cutting and
yeah.
putting together the pieces. And so I realized I need a better space, a bigger space, one that I don't have to rely on the weather to be able to solder outside.
Well, I'm so glad you have the space now, and
Yeah.
your piece is amazing. And I know there's more to come. I've seen the drawings. I know Joyce was
Absolutely.
holding up her piece earlier, and you've got those same, like, you know, the vision is coming through. And I
Yeah.
love your filing cabinet soldering area. It's really cool. I can't wait until we can have visitors in the center again, and people can come in and see, you know, and do a studio visit with you and get to meet you and see you. And thank you so much for sharing all of this stuff. I did see that Joyce had something she wanted to say to you. I don't
All
think
right.
it's a question, but she was saying that, are you aware the Maryland Federation of Art upcoming show Elemental Enter? So it's on the chat. So you would,
I did not, but I will try to get information on that.
yeah, it's awesome. Are there any other questions from Sarah, for Sarah, before I want to just open it up just in case. I got to wait a second just in case, because I know people pop their hands up. All right, I'm going to move on. And if people have a question for Sarah or something you want to say, just pop it in the chat and we'll come back to it in the end. Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm really,
Thank you.
having space, new cool medium. All right, Joan is next.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, great. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Joan Bevilacqua. I don't know how long I've been at the Arts Center. I just don't remember. I was at Oella Mill before that, and I was at Savage Mill before that. I'm a painter. I originally was doing watercolor, and then when I went to graduate school, I switched to oil, and I teach at a number of different colleges in the area. And I seem to be doing Zoom 24/7 now.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
All right, I have some questions for you, unless you want to, do you want to talk about, so you have a lot of dresses in your work. Can you tell us about the symbolism of the dresses?
Right. Well, when I went to graduate school, I needed a thesis, and I needed a theme for my thesis show. So I kind of went back into my mind about some of the themes that I had used over my time as an artist before that. And I had already started painting dresses. I didn't realize that it had become a theme. I have a painting that was in my mother's house that was done in probably 1986. And so it was a theme already, but for me, dresses are symbolic or metaphorical for a woman's life. And I also was a seamstress in high school. And so I have a connection with fabric also. And I also have this ability to remember what I was wearing at any particular important time of my life, which is really kind of freaky.
Yeah.
But I'm not a collector, so I didn't keep all those outfits. My grandmother went to John F. Kennedy's inauguration and to the ball, and I wished I'd been able to keep the gown that she wore to the ball, because that definitely would have been part of a painting. So some of my paintings are autobiographical as far as what the dresses are, and some of them are not.
Are they?
But I also love fabric, love looking at fabric.
Yeah, and you can see the detail work in the fabric on the dresses. Do you use photographs? Do you use images or dresses, or you just from memory? You just
No. I set up a still life in my studio. I found that when I switched to oil, I could not really use photographs. My watercolors were based a lot of times on photographs, but with oil painting, it just didn't work for me. This painting of the ballet dresses actually is interesting. David Zuccarini, one of our fellow resident artists, knocked on my studio door and said, "Did you know that the ballet company is moving out?" The ballet, they had lessons, and they were selling off all of their costumes. So I went down that other hall past your office, and they had tons of tutus for sale. They were a little bit more expensive, so I only bought 2, and that's why this is called 2.
That's amazing. I had no idea that you're using pieces from the ballet. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, someone said beautiful painting, Joan. We got.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to remind you, if you want to ask a question, you can just jump in. I'm going to continue my questions unless someone raises their hand for Joan. So you started I was going to ask you, how has your artwork developed over time? But it seems like you've been inspired by dresses for many years. So there are other things that are coming into play now into your pieces that is like evolving in some way?
It's hard to say that I'm evolving. I think I just grow. The painting of the chair, again, is a watercolor, and that was from a photograph, and that was in my mother's house. I called it grandmother's chair, but she never sat in it. We all sat in it. My mother's house has been, well, we still have it, but she doesn't live there anymore. My niece lives there. So a lot of the old furniture is gone. A lot of the wallpaper has been stripped, which it should have been. And it was just a memory of my mother, who is still alive, but not in the house. So a lot of my work is, I did a series of antiques, old things. I like stuff, old stuff.
Yeah. Well, they're beautiful. And I'm going to wait and see just another second. Did anybody pop in, Ellie, to ask a question? Nope, not right now. Okay, thank you so much, Joan. If anybody asks any questions, we'll come back at the end, at the very end.
Sure.
Okay, Jamie is next. Oh, I didn't see Jamie before. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
Okay, let me see. Okay, I found you. I like to look at you. You know, you can't look at everybody at the same time, so I have to search for you. Hi, Jamie. Okay, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jamie Travers, and I came to the center around the same time that, say, Andre came. We were both victims of eviction at Oella.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you here. All right, I'm going to start with questions.
Joan was there, and I think Joan gave me a good word, and I think I got into the center because of Joan.
Oh, well, you have a lot to thank her for. You've been here so long now. All right, so I'm going to ask you some questions. If people have questions for Jamie, please feel free to raise your hand now and just interrupt me, okay? But I'm just gonna start. So we see a lot of faces. Faces are kind of a reoccurring motif in your work, heads. Can you tell us about that? What does that symbolize?
Well, I'm an elementary school art teacher, and I'm always drawing my children, my students. And going way back when I was in grad school, I took a class with Karen Carroll called Arts and Human Development, and we would go out to different schools and do experiments. And one of the experiments was called Drawing Through Dictation with 3-year-olds. Once say a 2 or 3-year-old can go from a scribble and sort of connect and make an oval, you can kind of talk them through to make their first tadpole person.
Yeah.
And when I did this, it was at Mount Royal Elementary. It was like a highlight of my life in a way. I was just like overwhelmed by the experience. And from that moment on, I kind of decided I want to be an art teacher at elementary school level.
That's so
and that's 20 odd years ago. And I feel my students are the ones that really inspire me. They're my energy, my life force.
That's amazing.
I steal ideas from them hourly.
and their energy, right? And so you can just keep on going forever and ever. That's amazing. Well, I was going to ask you that, how that inspires you in your artwork that you teach in elementary school. I love that they're just inspiring you all the time.
Yes. Now, this piece that's showing right now, this is called Corona Days. And that's the main thing that I sort of think about during this time, these 4 months without school, is the kids. We, in Howard County, we did I did videotapes from the studio, and the kids sort of did their art at their leisure type thing. That's how it was set up. But I did go into sort of virtual classrooms and talk to the kids. And the number one thing was that they just missed their friends and being with their friends, and the importance of that social connection.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to capture that moment. I know we talked about it when the exhibit, the children's exhibit, was in here too, you know, and just like this time capsule was captured in here.
This piece that's up right now is, I call this the birth of abstract expressionism, which is like, never allow your child to have grape juice in the living room.
This is a good lesson for all of us. Ellie, I want to open it up. If someone has a question for Jamie, please raise your hand, but I want to ask you about this painting. Thanks, Ellie. This is exactly the one I was asking for. This looks familiar.
Yes, that's down the hallway from the studio.
Yes.
I love the double spout sink. I mean, it is like classic. It's as good as Marcel Duchamp's, Armut urinal. It's just a automatic ready-made to me. And this piece is called 1, 2, 3, Save Some for Me. When you take children for drinks, some kids will, be a little too long getting a drink. So we have this little thing where we say, 1, 2, 3, save some for me.
Oh, that's smart. That's so great. Oh, great. Thanks so much, Jamie. We have a comment in here. Ellie, do you want to read this comment?
Yes, Lisa Nardi said, "These are so funny and full of life, Jamie. Much like you. I love them." And I agree. These are great.
Yes, Miss Nardi is one of my best buddies.
Oh, thanks, Lisa, for being here with us tonight. All right, thanks, Jamie, so much. If any other questions come up, anything pops up, we'll come back to it in the end, okay? All right. Oh, so we're on our last artist, Charlotte Mann Lee. Where is Charlotte? I don't see Charlotte yet. I'm waiting.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Charlotte. I'm gonna find you. I'm sorry. Okay, so go ahead and introduce yourself while I'm looking for you.
Okay. So I'm Charlotte Mann Lee. I was the first emerging artist resident at HCCA. I started back in October and went through June of this year. And now I'm currently a resident at Long Reach Studios. I work primarily as a painter in watercolor and acrylic. The subject matter I enjoy the most is like portraiture, and I've recently gotten more into landscapes. And a lot of my art is very spiritual, and that's a reflection of my Christian faith.
That's awesome, Charlotte. Yes, I know you're answering all the things that I was going to ask you about. But okay, so I'm just reminding everybody, go ahead and answer. Raise your hand if you have a question for Charlotte, and I'm just going to ask my questions. And Ellie, just interrupt me if someone has a question to come in. Charlotte, yes, congratulations on being our first emerging artist resident. How was the residency effective for you? What did you learn? What did you gain throughout your time here?
I think it was very effective. It was, first of all, nice to have a really pretty sizable space compared to what I had when I was working from home after college, and that was very limited, so that was great. I think what I learned the most is just about persevering as an artist. sometimes through difficult times. When I started my residency, I had a close family friend passed away right before, so it was not what I expected going into it. I thought I'd be more open to like experimentation and just having fun when I started, but it was like kind of a lot of sadness hanging over at the beginning. So just pushing through that and being able to kind of make that into art is part of what I learned. And also just learning how to be disciplined as an artist in the professional world beyond just the regiments of school. When you have a different assignment you have to do, I kind of have to regulate myself. I'd set up a schedule. Also just learning how to kind of develop a body of work and focusing on like a series, maybe building off of a similar idea rather than just trying to make a distinctive kind of super original piece every time. I think that's kind of the mode I've been in for a while, but I'm learning how to maybe develop a similar theme, maybe still somewhat distinctive, but keeping that a little more consistent. And I also really enjoyed getting to know some of the other resident artists, like Joyce, who was my roomie. I, learned a lot from her and just enjoyed interacting with other artists because when I was at home, I didn't really have that and I was pretty isolated.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. Did anybody pop in while she was talking? I'm going to ask another question. Okay, I didn't see any hands. All right. So what can you tell us about the integration of Hebrew text with the portraits in your work?
Yeah, so I started incorporating Hebrew back in late 2018. It was actually a portrait I did of my now husband. And it was for the HOCO Open show. It was the first of a series called the Biblical Name series. So his name is Jeremiah, which is a Hebrew name originally. So I kind of researched into the etymology of his name and different things from the Bible regarding the prophet Jeremiah. And so I just decided to integrate Hebrew into that piece. And I think it kind of started emerging from there. And now to where I am now, like what you see in the show, these are all self-portraits. So it's taken on a little bit more personal bent to it. It's all from the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures. So different phrases in scripture that stick out to me, usually something that I feel like God's impressing on me, during whatever time I'm making the work. Usually whatever I'm going through, usually my reaction to that, like this piece, for instance, I started a little bit after I got engaged back in, the very end of December, but I completed this in January. So I was anticipating a major life change and kind of looking forward into the future. Like, I don't know exactly how this is going to look. This is kind of scary, but this is about, hoping in the Lord and renewing my strength in Him, even when I don't know every little detail. And of course, I guess it could apply even further now to COVID. Everything seems so uncertain, but it's that grounding that I have in my faith. Yeah. Keeps me going.
That's great. Thanks so much. Oh, so I see Jeremy messaged and said, Charlotte, great job with the texture in your work. So that's great. I'm so glad that you've been inspired here and that you've got this whole group of artists. Any questions for Charlotte? Because I want to say something else. No? Nobody popping in? Okay. So I wanted to say, so yes, you're done. Your residency here as an working artist is over. So now you're in our private studios at the Long Reach Village Center. And so our community here, I'll still see you because I'm participating in that program, but our community here is going to miss you so much. I know you have this connection with them now and that will never go away, but do you have something to look forward to? Do you have an exhibit that you're participating in, something where we can find you? The greater Howard County community can keep following you even though you're not here?
As of right now, I don't have any upcoming exhibits, but I can just let you know my website is charlottemanart.wordpress.com, and then you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram as CM Art Lover. That's my handle.
Can you put all this in the chat so that people can remember it if they're watching?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, thanks so much, Charlotte. I really appreciate you being here. We've loved having you here as our emerging artist resident, and this center is going to miss you, but Long Reach is really lucky to have you. So thanks so much. All right, Ellie, do you want to go back with these other questions? I know you probably have gotten some private questions as well. So do you want to ask some questions?
Yes, we had some questions for Jeremy that we didn't get to, so I'm gonna ask Jeremy to unmute himself. But we had a question from Mary Kay Kenny, and she asked, I would love to hear Jeremy speak to the portrait of James Baldwin. I love the way he intersects art with inspiration and what is happening in the current culture.
Yeah, so before I painted that, I was definitely at like a sort of a crossroads in terms of what to do, what's my next thing I'm gonna paint, what am I guess, inspired by. And so the James Baldwin portrait came after the death of George Floyd and all of the protests around the country. And I guess after that, it was like, so number one, I read the book, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and it's a great book that really documents the Black experience in America. And it's just really, it's right on time. Like if you read it, you would think he wrote it last week, you know? And so with that, I kind of found a lot of inspiration and I guess what to do. So in a lot of my other work, I guess I would always try and sort of document the Black experience from my perspective and kind of put a twist on it. But now, and then I would kind of jump around to pretty pictures and things like that. And I guess in college, I went to Howard University, and they were always showing us a lot of, the majority of the Black artists that they would show us were artists that were from the 60s and 70s and of the civil rights movement. And everybody there seemed to be an artist with a purpose. And I think after all this, I realized like, oh, wow, I actually do have something to say and I have a special way to say it. So it gave me a little bit more inspiration. And so now I have way more ideas and things to paint. So yeah, so that's that.
Great. And then Jesse also had a question about the same painting. He said, we do not have time for this question, but I wanted to share this point of interest with you, Jeremy. The portrait of James Baldwin stood out to me, which also seems to speak to this lone experience. And I find it powerful in relationship to the empty pool. I would love to hear about what inspired that portrait, which you just talked about, but what you discovered in representing this iconic figure and how it relates to the rest of your work, particularly its neighbor, the pool.
Well, to be honest, they're kind of like the pool and everything else is, I guess, to me, is something that is strictly sort of art based. You know, it sure, it had something to do with my personal life because I see that place, but it was more something like, how can I evolve as an artist and what's the next thing I can do? And then whereas the James Baldwin portrait really, it didn't have so much to do with like, oh, what can I do as an artist and how can I do this in some way that's different? It was more just like, you know, I can do these things. This is something that people need to know about. Or if you don't know who this person is, you need to know who this person is. So to me, it was just more like, I don't know, I guess before my direction was kind of all over the place in terms of like me trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I guess you can see with the James Baldwin portrait, I'm starting to really kind of find the direction that I think I want to go in from now on, or at least until I find a new direction. So, but, so I guess that's the, you know, so if you look at all the other 4 paintings, they have almost nothing to do with the James Baldwin painting. And I guess everything after that pool will have something to do with the James Baldwin painting.
Great, thanks for answering those questions. We are going to move on to, I think we have a question for Jamie. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Yep.
Hey, I'm still here.
Jamie, we had a question from Jesse. He said, fun, Jamie, are those photographed installations or do you paint on the photographs?
I do a little bit of everything, from making installations where I cut paper and actually put them into place and then photograph it. And then I'll also do like Photoshop and sort of collage that way. So I'm always drawing, and I'm just taking different elements and sort of collaging it together.
So for those smaller prints, is it a combination of those different techniques as opposed to just all of them being
like for instance, that piece, Corona Days, it's a sketchbook drawing of a boy's face. There's an app that makes mandalas that I did as a fifth grade lesson. And I took one of my mandalas that looked very kind of medieval. It made me sort of think of the, when you see the Corona cell or whatever it is all the time, I see it as this sort of sharp, prickly, almost like a medieval chain mace type thing. And then it's all superimposed on top of kind of like a parking lot, some parking lot. I photograph a lot of asphalt and cement in parking lots. So I've sort of put all that together.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jamie. Thanks for the great questions. Does anybody else have a question that we didn't get to? Anybody want to unmute and ask a question? All right.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out.
Yes, definitely. Yes, thank you to all the artists who came and spoke today. I have a little thing I wrote that I'll finish the recording with. So thank you all for joining us. We have a wonderful group of resident artists here at HCCA, and not all of them could join us tonight. If you have time to view the exhibit virtually, Ellie has added the direct link here on the chat, or you could come visit us safely during our summer hours. They are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. The last day to see this exhibit is August 15th. Due to COVID-19 and increased safety measures being established in Howard County, the Arts Center looks very different right now. I'm so grateful for the hard work of the staff of the Arts Council who worked to learn what safety measures needed to be put in place and to execute them diligently so that we were able to have the resident artists exhibit. I also want to thank Ellie Hernandez specifically, who is moderating this right now, our gallery and programs coordinator. She really worked hard to make this happen. I also want to take a moment to mention that we have two new artists in our studio wing. Dwayne Lutzko is an oil painter and our newest resident artist. And we are also happy to introduce Lisa Scarbath, a mosaic artist and this year's emerging artist resident. So I look forward to seeing their work added to our visual artist, resident visual artist exhibit next year, along with all of these amazing artists, and all of the artists who are online right now are in the exhibit that you haven't seen tonight. So thank you all again for coming on to this virtual reception and for talking with all the artists and for all of your great questions. And please stay safe. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.